Hey, everybody, welcome back to the channel that takes you deep inside the San Francisco 49ers. I am your host, Jack Hammer. Hey, and it's interesting when you watch Brock Purdy. This guy takes more hits off the field, I think, than he takes on it. The latest coming from Dan Orlovsky of ESPN. And that drew a fire response this morning from 49ers tight end George Kittle. George Kittle went on the radio with KNBR, the Murph and Mac show, the morning show there on KNBR. This topic was broached, and he said, I saw that this morning. That's disrespectful to Brock Purdy. I think Mac Jones is a fine quarterback. What Brock's doing, you look at his stats, just watch the tape. People just say, oh, I see his stats. I see some things they talk about on Sunday Night Football. No, just watch him move in the pocket. Watch some of his throws that he's making. Sure, is there room for improvement? Yeah, there's room for improvement on all of us. We can all get better. The reason for Brock, it's all the focus on him, is that he's a quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, and we're 5-0. It's one of the most historic franchises. There's always a quarterback, some type of, not just controversy, but someone always wants to say something about the 49ers quarterback, and that's what Orlovsky talked about. Okay, so let him talk. Just watch the tape and watch what Purdy does every single game. It's phenomenal. And you listen to the comments, and if you haven't already heard what Dan Orlovsky had to say with regards to Brock Purdy, this is what Orlovsky said. Remember now, this was on Monday after the 49ers went out and they just blew out the Dallas Cowboys 42-10 on Sunday Night Football, where Dan Orlovsky goes on ESPN's First Take show and says that New England Patriots quarterback Mac Jones would enjoy similar success if he were on the 49ers. This is exactly what he said. If Jones was in San Francisco, he would be playing like Brock Purdy. Orlovsky said, no quarterback is going to be successful in New England. Now, if you listen to what Orlovsky said there, yeah, there's a part of what he said in regards to no quarterback being successful in New England. That part of it I can agree with. But saying that he's going to all of a sudden go to San Francisco and play like Brock Purdy, come on, Dan, you're smarter than this. There's no way that these two are even really in the same conversation at this point. Maybe you could have made that point last offseason. After only seeing a few starts, the handful of starts from Brock Purdy, the 5 starts during the regular season, the 3 in the postseason, the way that he performed when he came in against Miami. But to make this comment now, this just makes really almost no sense at all. And especially when you look at Purdy, he comes into he just had arguably his best game yet against the Cowboys on Sunday, throwing a career high 4 touchdown passes while posting a career best passer rating of 144.4. And again, the 49ers winning that game 42-10. Meanwhile, you got Mac Jones out in New England. He was benched. And not only is Mac Jones benched on Sunday, it's 2 weeks in a row that Mac Jones has been benched by the coaches out in New England. And Mac Jones just 12 of 22 with 2 interceptions in the Patriots' 34-0 loss to the New Orleans Saints the week before against this same Dallas Cowboys team that we saw Brock Purdy just take apart on Sunday Night Football. Mac Jones had a couple of interceptions there, including a pick 6. So this entire discussion when it comes to Brock Purdy and Mac Jones, just it's not where it's at. When you look at Orlovsky's comment again, he made it on ESPN's Get Up, and really what you look at is it implies that Purdy simply is just a product of the talent and the system in Santa Clara. The notion that 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan himself called ridiculous just last week. He was asked that question on Wednesday, and Kyle Shanahan completely shot that down and basically said the same thing that George Kittle just said. Go watch the film if you think it's just about the guy doing this because of the system. The second-year quarterback and the last pick of the draft last season has yet to lose a game where he's played at least 3 quarters dating back to week 13 of last season, reaching countless milestones along the way and more than earning the respect of his teammates. Purdy's success this season has placed him at the forefront of the NFL MVP conversation, all before the 23-year-old has even played a full season in the league. You look at the numbers. This guy was a long shot to win the MVP. I mentioned it during the offseason when you had an interview with Steve Mariucci on 95.7 The Game, in which Steve Mariucci said that if Brock Purdy performed at the same level that he did in 2022 this season, that the San Francisco 49ers would win the Super Bowl. I responded to that saying that if that happens and he plays at that same level for 17 weeks this season, right, that we're in now, he's going to be in the MVP conversation. And right now we're seeing him be in that conversation. And again, Orlovsky's statement, it was met with some swift backlash, and it wasn't even just from George Kittle. 4-time NFL MVP Aaron Rodgers went on the Pat McAfee show earlier today, and even he had some comments about it, saying that he hopes that Purdy hears all the noise and uses his motivation. And to some extent, I think we've already seen some of that. I know in some of the comments that were made following the game against the Dallas Cowboys that Brock Purdy had told Kyle Juszczyk earlier in the week, last week, leading up to the Dallas Cowboys game, that he was looking forward and he wanted to have a big game against Dallas. And it makes a lot of sense. And, the whole thing here with these comments that really is funny is there's a whole lot of 49er fans right now that are agreeing with Rex Ryan, because Rex Ryan basically looked at him and said, "You're crazy, Dan. That's not going to happen." He said that it was a slap in Purdy's face. And, from what you hear from George Kittle, it's pretty clear that he agrees with what's going on there. And, I think when you look at this discussion, when you hear people like Dan Orlovsky is just the most recent in a long line of analysts, commentators, YouTube hosts, writers across the NFL, what have you, that are saying things like this about Brock Purdy. It's not just Dan Orlovsky. He just happens to be the most recent. Last week, it was Stephen Ruiz of The Ringer who had Brock Purdy listed as like the 24th or 25th best quarterback in the NFL, who came in and said that, like a lot of people, you could basically take all these guys and put them in San Francisco and they're going to put the same numbers up, and then double down over the weekend, saying at one point where he said he'll stop riding if Brock Purdy and the 49ers win a Super Bowl. And then on top of that, he comes out and talks about all the times he's been right. You got lucky a couple times. That's good. And you look at what was said, and, it's just, again, one of those things. And like for me, my thought on this, and I agree with George Kittle here, is that every successful quarterback has done so with the help of players around them. Every quarterback in the NFL that's been successful, that's played at a high level, they've had guys around them help them. And we don't even have to look any further than just San Francisco to understand this. When you go back and you look at Steve Young and Joe Montana and their careers, these are guys who were tremendous players in San Francisco. And look at the guys that they had around them. Joe Montana was really the original system quarterback, right? Think about this one for a second. Joe Montana, he had Dwight Clark, Freddie Solomon, Fred Dean, Ronnie Lott on that defensive side. Also ended up playing with Jerry Rice and John Taylor later on in his career. When you look at Joe Montana, you look at the career that he had. He played for a head coach that went into the NFL, and Bill Walsh. And Bill Walsh was looked at as one of the most innovative head coaches of all time in the NFL. And guess who benefited from Bill Walsh's innovation and genius in terms of coaching? That's right, Joe Montana. Later on, Steve Young. And, again, this is just one of those things that everybody keeps wanting to plop on Brock Purdy. And I don't really understand why. We keep seeing this happen with Brock Purdy. Maybe because, Jimmy Garoppolo had some success in San Francisco. So since Garoppolo had some success here, then, it means that anybody should be able to have success. I don't know. You go back to 2016 and you had Matt Ryan win an MVP award in Kyle Shanahan's system. And Matt Ryan was already a really good quarterback even before that point. And he continued to be for a short time after Kyle Shanahan left. His age caught up with him there. But one of the other things that I think is interesting for myself when I look at this argument, and I talk about Jerry Rice, I talk about Joe Montana, and Steve Young, especially Montana and Young, is really when you look at Joe Montana in particular. For myself, I'm old enough to have watched Joe Montana play his entire career in San Francisco. I'm old enough to have remembered Joe Montana being called a system quarterback back when he played throughout the 80s. I remember him being called the offense being called the dink and dunk offense by Bill Parcells of the New York Giants back in the 80s when these two teams were fierce rivals. I remember all those things, and one of the other things that I remember about Joe Montana, and this is a trait that I think he shares with Brock Purdy, is these guys were both guys who fierce competitors, didn't mind talking smack to the other team. They relished that moment. That was a big moment. We haven't seen a lot of those for Brock Purdy yet. When I say big moment, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen very many situations where he's been at the end of the game, having to lead a score, lead a team from behind at the very end of the game. There was the one last year out in Vegas where he brought them back. There was the really nice drive at the end of the first half this year against the Rams, but that being down, having to come back and make that big play, we haven't really seen Purdy have to be in that situation very much. But one of the things that I know 49ers players believe is that they believe in Brock Purdy, and that Brock Purdy himself relishes those types of opportunities. And as part of his comments today on KNBR, George Kittle even mentioned some of this. He talked uh, about Brock Purdy in this way. What he said is, he was asked about, Brock kind of has that persona, just that kind of, the good young, good little brother type of vibe. And George Kittle responded, he said, if you had asked me that last year, I probably would have said, yeah, but no, I wouldn't tell you that anymore. I would answer, I'd say, absolutely not. I feel like I'm with a lethal killer in my huddle. It's really impressive, just his dedication to it, how he works. When he gets in the huddle, he is like a different person. In the locker room, he's got his cheerfulness about him. But the second he gets on the field, it's all business. And you see that all the time from Brock Purdy. One of the things you see with Purdy is he gets out there, you see him score a touchdown, you see him throw a touchdown, what have you. And this is a guy who celebrates, and he has no problem talking some smack back to the other team. You look at the touchdown throw. Let's call it up. Actually, since we're here talking about this, and since George Kittle said that you should watch the film if you want to see how good Brock Purdy is, let's pull up a couple of plays from the game on Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys. I want to pull this first one up. This is the touchdown throw that Brock Purdy threw to George Kittle, and we're just going to watch it from the all 22 view. Just this one here, and as you watch this, just pay attention to Brock Purdy's reaction after the play. He knows it's a touchdown. He's running to the sidelines. Look at that, working with celebrating right there with Kyle Juszczyk after the play's over with. And again, talking about the things that he can do. And George Kittle talked about, just watch what he does, watch the way that he moves in the pocket, the way that he gets the ball out, all these different things. Look at the pocket movement here. This is a throw that, if again, I don't really understand where this comes from when it comes to Brock Purdy, why it's just a Brock Purdy thing. It's not, but this play right here, this escape, this ability to get out, make the play, get the ball down there. If this was Kurt Warner, or if this was, a guy like Patrick Mahomes, everybody's losing their mind over this. And it's not even a super hard play, but it's just that ability to escape. And then look at the rope that he throws. It's right on the money. Escape, get out of the pocket, and throw. And again, there was conversations this offseason. There was somebody who does YouTube on a pretty high level, who made a whole show about Brock Purdy being basically Jimmy Garoppolo, and you got to be shitting me. There is no way that Jimmy Garoppolo makes this play. If you watch Jimmy Garoppolo play on Monday Night Football for the Las Vegas Raiders against the Green Bay Packers, is Jimmy Garoppolo making this play? No, he's in the pocket. He's bouncing around, and maybe he still makes the throw, but he's not making this. He's not escaping the pass rush over here off the right side by Randy Gregory. He just doesn't have that kind of mobility. He might have had a little bit in 2017 when he first joined the 49ers, but he doesn't have it anymore. And, what are we doing? If we're going to knock Brock Purdy and say he's throwing a wide open receiver, what's he supposed to do? Is he supposed to throw it to the guys that are covered just because you don't want him? I mean, part of the reason that George Kittle is so wide open here isn't because of the play design. Part of the reason that George Kittle is so wide open on this particular throw right here is because of the fact that Brock Purdy escapes the pocket and gets out. I mean, it's not open early. They got him covered. But then once Brock Purdy moves, everything about this play changes, and it's a touchdown, And again, just really high level stuff. And we see this kind of thing from Brock Purdy all the time. And that's why, for me, that's why I talked a little bit ago about Joe Montana. And I bring up, you're going to hear a lot of from me as we move forward in comparisons between Joe Montana and Brock Purdy. And the reason I said is because I just see, again, I watched all of Joe Montana from the time that he started till the time that he finished his entire career in San Francisco. If you're lucky enough to watch the 49ers from 1981 to 1990, you saw it, right? After 90, he was out because he got injured in that 1990 NFC Championship game. But you saw little glimpses of it when he was at Kansas City in 94, 93 and 94. I think it was those 2 years. But you didn't really see the full Joe what he was back when he was running the show in San Francisco. And again, just this ability to get out of the pocket, escape, and put the ball on the money, just really high level stuff. And I've seen different things on Joe Montana, and I've heard people talk about how he was always on the money, every throw was on target, all those kind of things. And I'm here to tell you that it's not. It's the good part about technology that we have today is you can go back and you can watch the San Francisco 49er games from the 80s. You can find the 1981 NFC Championship game on YouTube. You can watch the whole game on this platform. You can watch a lot of Joe Montana games, and one of the things that you'll see is there's a lot of misses that Joe Montana had, very similar to throws that we see from Brock Purdy, or really almost, say it with me, any NFL quarterback has some misses. So it's an interesting discussion, to say the least. And I'm going to show you some more film here in a minute. There was a comment over here from Kim that I wanted to get to. He said, Kurt Warner played great and he was undrafted. This is a great one, Kim. Good to see you. I'm back here, by the way. Join the channel. Become a member if you can. But, that's a really good example here, because when you look at Kurt Warner, and you look at the guys that he had around him, right? And you don't really hear Kurt Warner talked about as a guy who was a product of the system. Yet, he came out of nowhere in 1999. He ends up in St. Louis, and he's got Mike Martz who's calling the plays. And at that time in 1999, Mike Martz was the big thing, because he had this offense that just threw the ball all over the field. And it was kind of like this whole Air Coryell thing, right? He has, a couple of Hall of Fame receivers that Hall of Fame receiver that he's throwing to, Marshall Faulk in the backfield that he's throwing the ball to. He's got playmakers all over the field, and there's nobody that calls Kurt Warner a product of the system. And it's just the only thing I can say when you're comparing Warner and the situation here, and I mentioned it a little bit ago, is the reason I can guess that this is coming about is because of the success that Kyle Shanahan had with Jimmy Garoppolo. But again, they're not the same player. They're not really even close. They're really not. And one of the things that I argued about a lot during this offseason was this notion that he's not a guy that throws the ball down the field. And I continuously talked about how that was just a false statement, that the 49ers don't throw the ball as much as some other teams, because they are a little bit more balanced than other teams. And so for the San Francisco 49ers, you're looking at a guy who, just doesn't have as many attempts. Well, if you go and you look at right now, through the first 5 weeks of this season, let's compare Brock Purdy, some of his numbers, to those of Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Tua Tagovailoa, and Jalen Hurts. Okay. Now, what I'm going to talk about here are throws of 10 plus yards down the field. So, that 10 to 19 yard range, that's the intermediate area. That's really where your majority of your downfield throwing occurs. That's kind of your bread and butter area with trying to get the ball down the field against defenses. And then you have your 20 plus, right? So if we take that 10 to 19 yard area plus the 20 plus, so anything 10 yards past the line of scrimmage and further, this season, Brock Purdy is 34 of 43. That means he's completed 79% of his throws that have traveled at least 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. 34 of 43 are those numbers for Brock Purdy. You take a look over at Josh Allen. Josh Allen has completed the same number of throws as Brock Purdy in that area, but he's also made about 16 more. So Josh Allen, 34 of 59 on throws 10 yards plus down past the line of scrimmage. Josh Allen, again, 34 of 59. That's 57.6% compared to Brock Purdy at 79. And then you look at Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is the gold standard because of his ability to move and all the things, which we see movement ability out of Brock Purdy. Now, I'm not going to tell you that he's got the arm of Patrick Mahomes. He does it in different ways. Like Trayvon 6890 says here, Purdy's anticipation is at the top of the NFL, and that's really it. He doesn't have the arm of some of these other guys, but he's got that ability to get the ball out of his hand on time early, very early. And I'm going to show you some examples of that here in a minute. But Patrick Mahomes this season, when he tries to throw 10 yards plus down the field, 25 of 53. He's completing only 47% of those attempts. Jalen Hurts, the other guy that was in the Super Bowl last year, somebody that a lot of 49er fans were really excited about last year when they were comparing him to a quarterback that's now the third stringer on the Dallas Cowboys. Jalen Hurts this season, when he throws the ball 10 yards or further past the line of scrimmage, 24 of 48, 50% is all he's completing when he's throwing the ball more than 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. Again, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, two of the quarterbacks that were in the Super Bowl last year. Especially when you talk about Jalen Hurts, you want to talk about a guy that benefits from a system. He's right there with Brock Purdy, I guess, especially when you consider how good they run the ball and the fact that he's able to really take advantage of those underneath throws. A lot of his completion percentage is built up with those throws that are under 10 yards. And then the last one, Tua Tagovailoa, who plays in a system very much like what you have here in San Francisco. Tagovailoa on throws 10 yards plus past the line of scrimmage this season, 39 of 62. Actually, one of the at a higher rate getting the ball down the field. It helps that you have Tyreek Hill. He's got that's a really good speedy wide receiver. Mike McDaniel, very aggressive, very similar to Kyle Shanahan. Tua Tagovailoa, 39 of 62 this season on throws beyond 10 yards. That's 63%. So if you were going to list them, you've got Brock Purdy and Tua Tagovailoa, number 1 and 2 out of this group of 5. Now, again, Purdy, Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, Tagovailoa. The two guys that have the arms that most people say aren't the strongest or maybe even the weakest. Some might even say they have noodle arms. I don't know. But you've got Brock Purdy, 79% completion percentage on throws 10 yards plus down the field. Tua Tagovailoa, 63% on those throws. Then from there, you get to Josh Allen, third, 57.6% on throws, 10 plus yards past the line of scrimmage. Jalen Hurts at 50%, and Patrick Mahomes, 47%. That sounds pretty good to me. I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty good number. Brock Purdy obviously making a lot of that up because of the fact that he's completed almost 90% of his throws in the 10 to 19 yard range. But the other thing is he's also gotten better on the deep throws. Last year, he completed just 50% of his throws beyond 20 yards down the field. This season, he's a little bit over that. So Brock Purdy showing some improvement there. He's been showing improvement throughout his game. Jeremy Price, good to have you on board. Good to see you, my guy. Says, what's up, Jack? We look pretty good. Niner gang. Absolutely. I do. The 49ers, I do think, look very good. I think this 49er team is one that there was some talk in the post game about this being a team that could possibly go undefeated. That's something that I've talked about on this channel for a couple of weeks. It's good to see everybody else in the Niner media crew catching up to it. I do think that this is a team that could go 17-0. When you look at the 49ers and who they have in front of them, there's really only one team that I would say matches up with them, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. Every other team, the 49ers are better than across the board. They're going to face a tough matchup this week against Cleveland. I think that Cleveland defense is very good, but they don't have the offense to do it. So I just don't see it as one that you're going to have to really pay attention to when you look throughout the rest of the league. So let's look at a couple of things. There's some folks in here that mentioned the anticipation being a big part of Brock Purdy's performance in his game so far. Let's look at it. There was there's a number of throws throughout this game, but I'm going to just go to this part of the game here in the second half because I think that this is really we can kind of set it here and we can just let it go because there's a number of good anticipation throws that we're going to see where you can really get a good glimpse of just how early Brock Purdy is getting the ball out of his hands to his receivers. I'm a little far on this one. Let me get back to it just a little bit. Sorry, guys. This one right here is early in the we're in the third quarter. This is the opening possession of the third quarter. The 49ers had just jumped off sides on their opening play of the third quarter. So they're facing 1st and 15. And you're going to see Brock Purdy here with just one of the best throws that you're going to see. You're going to get Brandon Ayuk running this little over route, and this ball just comes out so quick. I'm going to show you this one more time. I want to show you. I'm going to stop it because I really want to show you the anticipation with which this ball comes out. And this is something you see Brock Purdy do a lot. So right at this point right here, the ball's already coming out. Look at where Brandon Ayuk is. He's at about the 32-yard line right now in his route. Look, and he's on the numbers. He's actually kind of in the middle of those numbers. Watch where he catches this ball and the anticipation that this ball comes out. This ball gets caught at the 38 at the hash. That receiver traveled from the 32-yard line over the numbers. He travels 6 yards further up the field and on about a quarter of the way across the field to get to where this ball was thrown, and he puts it right on the money. This is fantastic stuff. And there's another one that I want to show you here in a minute that I think is even better. And I would say this one, it's reminiscent of a throw that Joe Montana made in the Super Bowl to Jerry Rice. We'll get to it in just a second, but I want to show you one more of Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk working. This is 3rd and 4. This is that same possession. You're going to get Brandon Ayuk and here comes Juwan Jennings. And you're getting Jennings is going to run a little out, and you got Ayuk running a deep kind of a corner out type of a route. And look at Purdy with bodies around him, step up into the pocket, something that people were complaining about last year that he wasn't doing enough. Remember, he was bailing out too much, going to his left. But now in this game here, you're seeing the improvement. You're seeing a guy that's growing. Remember, this offseason, it was all about Brock Purdy was too close to his ceiling compared to everybody else. But here what you've got is you've got a quarterback that you can see growing from where he was last year to where he is this year. He's been working much better within the pocket, moving around that pocket to make those throws. And on this one right here, he hits his back foot. He's got bodies around him. He has to step up, and then he does this throw. I'm going to show you this one from the behind and front angles as well, because he's not even able to step up. This is all arm, really. He's using his hips a little bit, but he's not even stepping into this throw. Watch this. When we watch it from this angle, watch Brock Purdy's feet. There's so much talk about Brock Purdy and this lack of arm strength and all this other crap that you hear. Sorry to swear, but I feel pretty passionate about this topic. Watch him get back here. He sets, and his feet, see how far his base is? See, he doesn't even step forward. All he does is he plants his feet and he's driving with his hips and his shoulders, but he's not able to actually even step into this throw. And he rips a deep out on the money, hitting 11 on stride. And that's the difference. And that's where Brock Purdy is so good, is his ability to hit guys in stride, throw this ball with anticipation. He knows where they're going to be. And in this game in particular, and he was on the money. And watch his feet again here. You're going to see they're a little separated, and he doesn't even step into it. Now, real quick, one more point on this throw and his footwork right here. If you remember, one of the things, it could have been because of the quarterback that was competing at the time, but there was a lot of people around this space who cover the 49ers in various capacities who were complaining about the work that Kyle Shanahan does with his quarterbacks, where they have the bag and they're having to slide side to side with that bag between their legs, right? And they're like, oh, that's a terrible drill. You even had Quincy Avery, a guy who failed miserably trying to get Trey Lance to become a top-level NFL quarterback, complaining about that throw. And one of the reasons that they do that drill is so that quarterbacks can make throws without having their feet in perfect position, being able to throw off platform within the pocket. And watch this movement right here. The way that his feet are, it almost looks like he's doing that bag drill. Watch his feet. Watch the separation of his feet before he throws. So he's got some pressure. He steps up. And look at see that separation of his feet. He doesn't even step. This is all upper body, all hips and upper body without even being able to step into the throw. And he just drops the ball right into Brandon Ayuk for a really nice game. There's just so much disrespect that goes on around Brock Purdy. And this isn't really even the 49ers area anymore. Now we're talking about more or less just on a national level, really, when it comes to the disrespect, and George Kittle trying his best today to shut it down. And this play right here, this is the next play. So they get a holding on that previous one. So now they're backed up instead of it being whatever it was. It's, I think, 2nd and 20 or 1st and 20. And this throw right here, this is the one to me that reminds me of Joe Montana in the Super Bowl against the Cincinnati Bengals. If you go back to that game between the Bengals and the Niners in Super Bowl 23, there's a play in those highlights where Joe Montana you can see it easily in the highlights. There's a play in which Montana drops back to pass. He's got some pressure, and he throws this ball over the middle to Jerry Rice, and Rice catches the ball. Couple of guys get tackled. A couple of defenders collide, and he breaks free, and he gets down the left sideline along the 49er sideline. It's actually during their drive to win the game. It's one of the longer plays on that series when the 49ers are going from their own, 8-yard line to score to win that Super Bowl. And he has Jerry Rice running a deep route over the middle. He just puts it right on him, drops it into him over the linebackers and in front of the safeties. And then you have a couple of guys collide and Rice is off to the races. This play reminds me of it. You're going to get you get Juwan Jennings running a dagger. This is the dagger concept for the Flyers, but you got Juwan Jennings running a vertical route to take the safety out and take the middle linebacker out, open up all the space in the middle of the field. And then you have Deebo Samuel running in and behind that. And look at Brock Purdy's already, he knows that he's throwing. He sees the linebacker vacating. He sees Dallas in a too high with their safeties. He knows that he wants to go to Deebo Samuel, and he just puts this thing right on the money and just right into the bucket. You can't do this better, guys. You just can't. And this isn't being a product of the system. This is the quarterback understanding what he's seen from the defense and knowing almost as soon as the ball gets in his hands, he knows right now where he's going with the ball because you have 55 with his back turned. There's no way he's going to make the play. We talked about this last week on the deep throw to Brandon. He knows that 55 can't make a play right now on that crosser from Deebo Samuel. The only guy that can do anything here is 32, and he's not even going to be in position. He just rifles a perfect shot to Deebo Samuel here, and this is just a sequence that you just don't really do it any better. And this is the angle for me that reminds me of Montana to Rice in the Super Bowl. It's this angle. This is the angle that you see in that highlight so much. And just look at this ball come out of his hands. I mean, he couldn't walk the ball down the field that 20 yards and hand it to Deebo Samuel any better than he threw it, especially with the anticipation with which that ball comes out of his hand. So again, all the stuff about Brock Purdy, can Mac Jones come in and do what Brock Purdy's doing? No, he couldn't. Dan Orlovsky, stop it. Like as Rex Ryan told you, Dan Orlovsky, Dano, stop it. You're killing me with this stuff. It's just, I like your stuff that you do at times, but you're too smart. You're a guy that works in the media that knows the power of your words, and to say that Brock Purdy and Mac Jones are the same, or that Mac Jones could step into this offense and play at the same level as Brock Purdy, come on. And George Kittle has every right to say that was disrespectful, because it was. And you come back and it just showed you two really nice downfield throws, and now look at this one. Boom, boom. Easy, quick hitter. Not really even easy, but just a shorter, quick hitter. And then let's get to the touchdown, because this drive ends with a touchdown score. And I just showed you on the previous play the anticipation on a couple of those throws from Brock Purdy. Let's go ahead and let's look at this one again. This is where he reminds me of Joe Montana, Steve Young. I go to Montana because he's right-handed, a little bit on the shorter side. Neither Joe Montana or Steve Young were really tall guys. Steve Young just about 6 foot, maybe 6'1" if you actually measured him. Joe Montana probably about 5'11", 6 foot if you measure him. I don't think either of them were the size that were 6'2", or whatever it was they put in the program. Back game day was called back in the day. But you're going to get a little play action here, and I'm going to stop this. Look at that ball's already coming out. Look where George Kittle is, and we know he's going to catch this ball all the way over at the 9. I mean, it's just the anticipation, and then you see the reaction of Purdy, and it's one. What I like about this is that this guy is excited, he likes playing the game. His teammates love playing with him. You get the play action, this ball out of his hand early, right to his receiver, makes it easy. And then look at the celebration. He's yelling and screaming at the sideline. He's celebrating with his teammates. And these guys, like I said, and like George Kittle said, these guys love playing with him. They think that he's a killer. They believe 100% that when Brock Purdy's on the field that they're going to win football games. And more than anything, you can say that's the biggest difference too. Take away the stuff that Brock Purdy does on the football field, the anticipation that he throws with, the fact that he just makes play after play after play, all these different things, the ability to move around, slide in the pocket, to slide around. When you look at Brock Purdy, this is a guy who he's thrown the ball 360 times since taking over for Jimmy Garoppolo against Miami. And he's only been sacked 23 times. And that offensive line plays good. The offensive line has been better than a lot of people thought they were going to be going into the season. Well, one of the reasons that they're better is because they have a quarterback that isn't a statue. And he's able to move around. He's able to make throws sliding from one side to the other. It's not drastic movements It's not herky jerky like, oh, sometimes you see with guys, he just slides over. He's just cool. He's just kind of slide, keeps his base the way it is, and boom, makes the throw. And that's really the other part when you watch Brock Purdy. And then the biggest separation is these guys as people. You can say that Mac Jones would come in and do everything that Brock Purdy does. You're wrong from a football standpoint, but you're even more wrong from a person standpoint. And again, the locker room in San Francisco, these guys love Brock Purdy. Look at what Mac Jones was, a guy that I thought would have been a good guy to draft last season. He was the guy that I had. I had him as the pick for the 49ers at number 3 when they were picking a quarterback in 2021. I had him over Trey Lance. I thought it should have been Mac Jones, should have been the pick at 3. I felt like he could step in right away and play, and he would have. He would have been able to step in and play right away in 2021. You saw that in New England. He came out there and New England made the playoffs in his rookie season. Heck, he made the Pro Bowl as a rookie. But it's been all downhill since then. Instead, what you've got out here with Brock Purdy is a guy who's elevated his play. He was a guy who was nearly the NFL Rookie of the Year, despite making just 5 starts, playing 6 full games pretty much during the regular season. And he was almost the NFL offensive MVP. And as a rookie, Rookie of the Year, not the MVP. Come on, Jack, get it together. He was almost named the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year last year, was Brock Purdy. And, you can say what you want about their ability on the field. Brock Purdy's better than Mac Jones. But also what they do off the field, Brock Purdy is better than Mac Jones. The guy just works and works and works. Torn UCL, can't do anything, can't throw, can't do any of that kind of stuff. So what does he do? He spends hours upon hours in the offseason working on his legs, working on his footwork, working on the strength of his legs, working on his agility, everything that he could do to possibly get ready. Watched film like crazy in the offseason. There was an interview that I talked about on this channel that he did with some guys out in Arizona, in particular one that worked with him a lot when he was in high school. He's a radio host now, former NFL quarterback, but also a radio host in Arizona. And Brock Purdy had a conversation with them last year, and we talked about it here on the channel. And Brock Purdy talking about watching film, understanding the mistakes that he made during his first season, the need from him to be able to go out and improve and where he can improve, stick with the play within the structure of the offense, don't freelance as much. And that's what he's doing. And that's what he's done this year. And that's why when you look at Brock Purdy, his numbers are off the charts this year. And then just one other thing, Brock Purdy right now, if you look at his performance, again, he's made 10 regular season starts for the San Francisco 49ers. He played all but 8 snaps in their game against the Miami Dolphins. So that's basically 11 regular season games for Brock Purdy. Then you take the playoffs, and that's 3 more starts. So right now, Brock Purdy has about 14 starts as the San Francisco 49ers starting quarterback, basically. Again, the only game that he hasn't won was the NFC Championship game when he got knocked out, right? You can fault him for that and say that the ball should have come out. You can fault a lot of different people for him getting knocked out of the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. Okay, whatever. But when you look at his numbers, again, from Miami till now, and you include the postseason, he's 10-0 in the regular season, 11-0 if you count the Miami game. So he's 11-0 there. Won 2 playoff games. He's 13-0, 13-1 because of the loss in a game in which he was only able to play one series before he was injured out in Philadelphia. Yeah, he played in the second half, but he couldn't throw the ball, right? And you look at Brock Purdy's numbers over that time. He is 249 of 360. That's right around 70%. I think it's just a little under 70%. But he's completed 3,000. He's thrown for 3,148 yards, 25 touchdowns throwing. We're not including his running scores. 25 passing touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. 360 pass attempts in his NFL career since taking over for Jimmy Garoppolo. He's turned the ball over 3 times. And that's the thing. 3 times, especially when you look at a 49ers team who we talk about it all the time on this channel, is one of the biggest things that they do is don't turn the ball over. And if you don't turn the ball over, you're going to win. The 49ers have only lost 3 games since 2021, the start of the 2021 season, that in which they have turned the ball over. Uh, they've lost where they've had 3 losses where they've not turned the ball over more than their opponents. So if they don't turn the ball over more than their opponents, they're almost always going to win. So just a really, really solid performance. And then, just kind of look through it. And like I said, George Kittle said, watch the tape. Johnny Dell's Football Academy. Johnny Dell joined me on Friday for a fun show. He said, Brock Purdy impresses me so much on film. It's almost hard to believe that what you're seeing is really what you're seeing, because he looks like Drew Brees in year 5. And I understand that. I do see that. And that's probably the best. That's one of the better examples that we've seen when it comes to Brock Purdy. We heard a lot of Drew Brees as comps last year, and I can see that. Jay Mill, good to see you on here, buddy. He says Purdy is just so smooth. I never feel nervous in crunch time with this dude. Yeah, it's just all the time, right? All the time. It looks good. Andrew says Mac Jones would be like a hot dog vendor for the 49ers. I don't know about that, but there's some good hot dog vendors actually at Levi Stadium. If you're trying to walk out of Levi Stadium right after the game, those guys cooking up the hot dogs with the onions and the bacon wrapped around those things, man, those are some good hot dogs. Mac Jones definitely isn't one of those kind of hot dog vendors. I'll tell you that right now. Andrew H also says maybe the Raiders' Rich Gannon, a guy who was really well there. But again, the main thing here was wanting to come on, talk about George Kittle, what he had to say about all the disrespect that we keep hearing with regards to Brock Purdy. It's just been a never-ending cycle for whatever reason, and it's crazy when you consider that this guy hasn't lost a regular season game yet. He's 10-0. He's 10-0 in games that he started, 11-0 in games that he's played the majority of the snaps when it comes to the regular season. Hasn't lost a game in which he's played the majority of the snaps, or more than 3/4 of the snaps, I think is the number. It's just, and for a guy who covers the NFL, works for one of the biggest networks that covers the team, to come out here and say that that if Mac Jones was in San Francisco, he'd be playing like Brock Purdy. That's just, I agree with what George Kittle said. That's just disrespectful to Brock Purdy, because Mac Jones and Brock Purdy right now, these guys, Mac Jones can't carry Brock Purdy's jock right now. Trust me, he can't. And I say that knowing full well that I was a guy who back in 2021 said that the 49ers should draft Mac Jones. I'd be wrong at this point, because they wouldn't have Brock Purdy. And I might have been okay. I might have been happy in 2021, but I think since then might not be quite the same. Michael Miller coming in, he says, like I've been saying, Brock Purdy is the best quarterback in the NFL. I've been saying it from last year, timestamps on Facebook. And Johnny Dell says Mac Jones would have success with the 49ers, but Purdy is taking them to a different stratosphere. Their points per game pace would be 534 points in a 16-game schedule. The franchise record is 505, which was set by the 1994 Super Bowl team. And, for me personally, when I look at this team right now and I look at Brock Purdy, I already compared him to Joe Montana and said that when I watch him, I feel like I'm watching Joe all over again. For me, if I had to compare this team, the 2023 San Francisco 49ers, to one of the great 49ers teams of the past, for me, it's the 1984 49ers. That 1984 49ers team, the number one defense in the league, just dominated everybody. The only loss they had that season, they were 15-1, was to the Pittsburgh Steelers, in a game that they probably should have won if it wasn't for a bad pass interference penalty on Eric Wright in the end zone that led to a touchdown for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then not even that, but they didn't. That wasn't it. Then they had a chance to tie the game at the end with a field goal by Way Wershing that he shanked and didn't make. That's how good that team was. But then they just dominated everybody throughout the season, and then dominated Dan Marino, Brock Purdy's childhood hero, in the Super Bowl to win that game 38-16 in Palo Alto. And that's really what I see. And part of the reason that I feel that way is because if if you've heard the stories, if not, I'll tell you now. In 1984, that team was all about winning the Super Bowl because the year before, in '83, they had reached the NFC Championship game. They went out to Washington, D.C., were playing the Redskins. They were down 21-0. They came back and tied that game up 21-21. At the end of the game, the Redskins had a long drive. They ended up kicking a field goal to win the game on a from Mark Mosley kicks the field goal. But along the way, there was a couple of pass interference calls on Ronnie Lott that just really screwed this 49ers team and was the reason why they didn't get to go play the Raiders in the Super Bowl that year. And that bad taste in their mouths lingered throughout that offseason, and they said, this isn't happening again. We're coming back next year, and we're going to show everybody who we are. And I really think that this 2023 team, from day one, I've said here, and I said on Twitter, and I've said in different platforms that I felt like the vibe around the 49ers was really good. Like they were ready to play from day one. Like the guys like Fred Warner, Christian McCaffrey, those guys, they're top line players that were there day one of OTAs. From day one of OTAs, you could just feel like the vibe with this team was that they were focused, that they were going to have a good season. There was a lot of talk and stuff on the outside about quarterbacks that had nothing to do with what this team was all about and where this team was going to go. And all that discussion took away from what was actually happening on the practice field in terms of this team growing and getting better. And, they're at that point, and that's why I feel like this team is really like that 84 team, because they had that season last year where they were in the NFC Championship game. Feel like they probably could have beat the Philadelphia Eagles, and they have had no problem saying as much that if Brock Purdy had stayed healthy, they feel like they would have won that game, and that's because they believe in Brock Purdy, and that's where I go with this one. Johnny Dell made a kind of a funny crack over here. He says, "But Jack, he threw 5 picks in training camp in one practice." Talking about Brock Purdy, and we're talking about Brock Purdy with all of the interceptions. Remember all the talk this offseason about the interceptions during training camp with Brock Purdy, myself included. And what I said back then was that it's something to pay attention to, and that those turnovers in training camp would be a big thing if they were happening in games. And if he can eliminate, if those turnovers, those are big during training camp, but really what it's going to come down to is that what happens when you start getting into the regular season games, if that continues. Because one of the things I felt was a big piece of Brock Purdy's success last year in 2022 was the fact that he didn't turn the ball over. He only had those 3 interceptions. And you start to look through where they are right now. Brock Purdy hasn't thrown an interception. And I was having a conversation with somebody about this on Sunday about, man, all those interceptions in training camp, what was going on there? And he doesn't do it out here. And my response was, well, he's not playing against the San Francisco 49ers defense every week. There's something to be gained for that. There's an old saying, right? Iron sharpens iron. And this 49ers offense going up against the 49ers defense, Brock Purdy coming off of UCL surgery. Remember all the talk in training camp about the lack of arm strength, supposedly, that people were talking about, which I don't understand, because Brock Purdy never looked like he had a lack of arm strength. To me, from the first day of practice out there, Brock Purdy's arm looked just as strong as it ever had. Coming off, he had a couple of rip throws that first day of practice, and people were talking about his lack of arm strength, and I didn't see it. What I saw that first day when he had a couple of bad throws was a guy who was making his first practice after having surgery, not going through any of the offseason program, and being thrown directly into 11-on-11 competition against one of the best defenses in the league, having some pass rush in his face and being a little, hesitant with some of his stuff. And, it's just about going out there. And I didn't have any doubt in what Brock Purdy was going to become this year. And hopefully that's come across in the shows that you've watched here. Watch whatever shows you're going to watch, enjoy whoever you're going to enjoy. One of the things that I've always tried to do is bring you the most accurate information that I was seeing at practice without trying to create headlines and get views off of it. My views hopefully are coming from just the information that we're sharing. And I need to stop talking about myself, because I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about this topic and George Kittle, Brock Purdy, the disrespect. I just don't get it. I don't get the disrespect. I don't understand where it was coming from in the offseason. I do, I get where it was coming from. I get the reason why there was some there. And that was because of the quarterback situation hadn't been, even though the 49ers had told you what the situation was going to be, there were people who were still hoping that Brock Purdy wasn't going to be the starting quarterback this season. And then now it's no longer from within. The argument about Brock Purdy is now outside of the 49ers sphere, and it's more on a national level. People who are like Stephen Ruiz from The Ringer, Dan Orlovsky here, the goofball with Fox Sports 1 that keeps talking about Brock Purdy because he knows it's going to grab the views down there. And what are you going to say? Brock Purdy playing at a high level again. For a guy who doesn't throw the ball down the field, when you look at Brock Purdy's numbers on throws 10-plus yards down the field, Brock Purdy, 79% completion rate on throws that traveled more than 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. Tua Tagovailoa, 63%. Josh Allen, 57.6%, so rounded up to 58. Jalen Hurts at 50% on those throws, and Patrick Mahomes at 47% on throws past 47 yards or past 10%, 10 yards past the line of scrimmage this season. So, hey, everybody, hope you enjoyed what you saw. Take it for what it's worth, but I think that Brock Purdy and the disrespect here has gotten out of control on that national level. Brock Purdy, if you ask me, I think he's very close to Joe Montana. I see a lot of Joe Montana qualities in him. We'll see if the only thing we haven't seen him do so far is lead a big come from behind win. Joe Montana had that when he was at Notre Dame, leading come from behind wins. Had those come from behind wins when he came to San Francisco. Did in the NFC Championship game in '81, the Super Bowl in '88. All those types of things. And I think that Brock Purdy is right there. I just see so much of Joe Montana and Brock Purdy's play, not only on the field, but then also the way in which he carries himself and the way that he talks with his teammates and the media. So there you go. Thanks all so much for watching. If you can do me a favor, hit that like button. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel. Maybe even think about becoming a member. You can do that too. And then also make sure that you hit your notifications because you want to make sure that you get notified whenever we go live so you don't miss any of the updates right here on Inside the Flames with Jack Hammer. And like I always said, hey, take it for what it's worth. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you. We have a super chat coming in really quick from Dazah Scraps who says, where do you rank John Lynch among GMs? I'm going to say that I would rank John Lynch as one of the top GMs. And I think John Lynch's success isn't just about John Lynch. John Lynch had a focus. John Lynch had a plan, a type of player, a type of system. And I think that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch both believe football is one in the same way. And when you look at the players that John Lynch has brought in to help turn this team around from what they took over in 2017 when they got here, I think one of the underrated pieces of John Lynch's success is him understanding what Kyle Shanahan wants and the types of players that Kyle Shanahan is looking for to fit into a system offensively and then also on that system defensively, because Kyle Shanahan was very clear. Kyle Shanahan is an offensive coordinator, offensive guy. That's where he's always at his best. But when you look at it, when he joined the San Francisco 49ers as the head coach, he had a plan on what kind of defense he wanted to run. He had an idea of the structure that he wanted to over there, all those types of things. And I think his ability to let John Lynch know these are the types of players that I want to do this, and this, regardless of the position, has helped John Lynch become one of the better GMs in the league. And they have a really good structure around that. So really good stuff there as well. So Dazad, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that. Going to wrap it up again. Like, subscribe, make sure you turn on your notifications. And also, please make sure that you, like always, take it for what it's worth. Have a great rest of your day.